We are the keepers of our future and our past, and the names of our heroes past and gone, on whose courage, strength, and wisdom the Northshield stands. Teach their stories to your children, to our children, till their names are written in our blood and bone.
Welcome to Griffin Tales. Thank you for joining us. We're talking to people in Northshield to hear their stories, and I'm your host, Queen Ellis. And tonight we have our special guest, Countess Bridei. You want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I am, I'm Countess Bridei. I was the first Queen of Northshield. That's probably my most notable title of any import. And I'm really glad to be here. I think this is a fabulous idea.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad you agreed to be interviewed. So, since a lot of these, they start out with, how did you start in the SCA?
Okay, well, first of all, it's been 40 years, so I'll do the best remembering I can. I actually found out about the SCA when I was in high school in the 70s, because there was a big spread in Newsweek or Life magazine about Penzic, and I saw that. It did not take me anywhere at that point in time, but then when I was in college in Chicago, someone came to the role-playing group that I was going to and asked if we wanted to try this for real, and who wants to sign up. And I said, I bet that's the group from the magazine. So I left my name and nothing happened. And a year later, I moved to Madison, Wisconsin. And I was working in a financial institution where, unbeknownst to me at this point, the SCA had their business account, the local SCA group. Now, they had recently put on a crown tournament, I believe in Janesville, and one of the checks paying for Feast bounced. And I was the one who processed bounced checks. And I saw Society for Creative Anachronism, and I think I stood up at my desk and shrieked. And then I'm on the computer trying to find, who's the contact person? Who's the contact person? I've been looking for these people for years. And I ended up reaching the current exchequer, because that's whose name was on file. And that was Peregrine Northumber. And he told me that, gosh, this very next weekend, the king and queen were coming. It was the Royal Progress of Talimar and Velmai. I think it was Talimar 1.
Okay.
As I said, this was in the 70s, the late 70s. So my first ever event was a Royal Progress, and I had Peregrine sitting on one side of me and another Yara Vetler member sitting on the other. And between the two of them, they told me everything that was going on. And it was sort of a great immersion. And I happened to have garb because my husband and I had gone to a Ren Fair in Janesville earlier in the year that was totally on SCA, not related. And, excuse me.
Oh, it's okay. It's fine.
I turned everything off but the alarms. So off we went, and that was it. Then we started going to fighting practice every week, and the rest is history.
So you've been a member of Yara pretty much your whole SCA career then?
Yes, my whole life.
Yeah. So what was Yara like when, for those of you Yara Vetler, Barony of Yara Vetler in Madison, Wisconsin, what was it like in the early days of the barony?
Well, I can't. It goes back further than even me. But most of the people around then were college students. The SCA was a registered University of Wisconsin organization, so that we could, and that meant we could use their facilities for free. So we had a huge sand pit arena stock pavilion for our fighting practice and archery. We were able to use some absolutely glorious rooms in the Memorial Union, which is the very old stone tiled union that has got some beautiful rooms where we were able to hold feasts and dance practice. So that was wonderful. We had to have, of course, a staff or faculty member as a sponsor, and sometimes that person was actually active, sometimes they weren't. Our Baroness at the time was Baroness Asdis Stephansdottir, who was the founding Baroness of Yara. Totally by accident, as far as she knows. She made an inquiry about the SCA, and they said, "Congratulations, you're the Baroness of Wisconsin." And they did she and her husband at the time did a great job getting things going. So we had dance practice very regularly. We had fighting and archery at least once a week. We had other guilds that met other nights. And then, as I think Shava mentioned, we had so many people doing so many activities, they added a meeting, a weekly meeting called Whatnot, which covered everything else that wasn't covered in other meetings of days that were already booked up. So it was it was kind of intellectual, but we had a lot of fighting. We had a lot of people doing things, not just researching. And it was a great place to wade in.
Yeah, it's awesome. Do you want to tell us about your persona?
Well, I got in just before the board of directors cracked down on needing documentation, and Bridei, which is my interpretation of how to say it, I did research at the time, was a name of a Pictish prince that I read in a children's book at the public library that I could not remember the name or author of, but my name was approved anyway because they didn't require documentation at the time.
Nice.
Now, Gillechattan, my surname, it means daughter of the servant of Hatton. Hatton was a confederation of clans in the north of Scotland. And their mark was a cat. And I had a cat and a unicorn in my personal device. And so I thought that was a great thing to be part of. And I figured, well, okay, so my dad is the head of that clan, so he's the servant of Hatton, so I'm his daughter, Gillechattan. And I was going to be an early Celt, so I made some wonderful tunics and trews, and I was wearing them and making my armor to be a little bit older, not very late period. And then came along the tournament company movement, where tournament companies were formed in many parts of the mid-realm, maybe further afield, I don't know, but I know in the mid-realm. And that was specifically late 14th, early 15th century. And at that point, I fell in love with the armor and the garb and the tents and the dishes and the music. And so I have an archaic Scottish Pictish name, but I'm a firmly turn of the 15th century.
15th century. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool. Do you still dabble in early period garb from time to time?
No, I don't. I haven't in a while, except for my some of my riding tunics for equestrian. But Viking dresses have been calling me because they just look so darn cool and comfortable.
They are very comfortable. And
I did do Middle Eastern once when I was waitressing at a Moroccan coffee tavern.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So what kind of activities have you been involved in the SCA?
Well, the first thing that sparked my interest in the SCA, of course, is swords. I pre-SCA, I read and saw the movies of all the Raphael Sabatini pirate books, and I watched all the nightly movies that I could, not knowing exactly which parts were ridiculous, but I liked them anyway. And then I like to sew a lot, so I had done some costuming, just sort of for my friends, because we didn't know about LARPs, we didn't have steampunk then, so it was just kind of for fun. And my group of friends and I had hosted occasional costume parties, and so swords and costuming was the first draw. So I did authorize to become a heavy fighter. And in fact, one of the highlights of my time in the SCA was, and I still remember it, was the first tournament fight where my knees didn't shake. I was so proud. I lost every bout. My first bout ever was with a guy at least twice as big as I was. And he apologized at the end. He's like, "I'm sorry, I was your first fight." I said, "No, it's fine. I had fun. I had no illusion of winning, so the pressure was off." So fighting and costuming, of course, first. And then, of course, we had to, acquire, dishes and utensils and whatnot for going to feasts. And I did love dance. I've been the dance mistress of Yarravettler. I got my my Willow, which was the Mid-Realm Arts Award for calligraphy and illumination. I didn't really do much archery then. I did take up archery later, and fencing for a while. And a little bit of cooking. I've run events. I've autocrated some events. So.
And you've also been pretty heavily involved with I'm blanking on the name. Horses.
Equestrian? Yes.
Equestrian.
Well, yes. Now, and that is a relatively new activity in the SCA. That was not around for at least my first 10, 15 years. At least not here.
Right.
But yes, now I am, and that in fact is a love of mine that goes back to when I was a giddy little child who loved horses, was just horse crazed. So.
And now you share your love of horses with people in Northshield.
Yes, I do.
So you've been involved with the SCA for a long time, and do you have any fun stories from back in the day?
I can remember them, I do. Now, one of the questions you had sent me was, what was your most defining moment? And pre-coronation, one of the moments I am just the most tickled to death about involves Count Sir Thade, who was a very, early knight in the Mid-Realm from Michigan. And he was quite the character. He was totally unfazed by anything. He always had a quip. He always had a retort. He would actually had a persona where he would come to court as a bear, dressed totally in fur as a bear, and he would respond to conversations as a bear, including knightings. So he was just a real character. And there was a time I was actually able to make him absolutely speechless. And I'm so proud of that moment. But I was watching my first knighting ceremony, and a friend of mine is a knight, I was in the back of a church leaning against the pew, and he's kind of leaning over my shoulder telling me what's going on. He happened to be squire to Count Sir Thade. Not knowing who Count Sir Thade was at the time, this person came up and berated my instructor to get his hands off that wench. And I just turned to him and I said, "Excuse me, sir, but butt out." And Count Sir Thade made the fish face. And I was so proud of that. Once I found out who it was and got over the horror that I would be expelled. So there's a story about a character from our past.
Is he still active in the SCA? I don't think I've ever met him.
I don't think he is. I think real life eventually started drawing him away.
Okay.
And what I know, I have a lot of stories that Baroness Osdis told. She's a remarkable storyteller. And she would tell us stories of early Penzics. Penzic 4, the Penzic Puddle. It's just wonderful stories. And I was able to attend the Jubilee Renaissance Fair in the Mid-Realm when it was going on, and there were a lot of things that happened there that were just silly and crazy. And
so do you have any fun Penzic stories you want to share? Or maybe not share?
Well, no, there's many I can share. My first Penzic, 4 of us drove out to Penzic in a Dodge Dart, and we had all our gear. It was a mundane tent, sleeping bags. We had no SCA gear except our first attempts at garb. And so we drove out there. We were in an area that had been a cornfield before, and they're always expanding. So it had been one of the places they just had cut down the corn and let us camp there. And anyone who has gone to Penzic knows of the Two Chucks, who we made up the story that they howl at things they're afraid of, like the moon and Pretty Women. So of course they were yipping and yapping while we're trying to sleep. And we all eventually got to sleep. And there was a particularly loud outburst of Two Chuck howling. And one of my tent mates in the dark just sat bolt upright, did a perfect imitation of the Hanna-Barbera cartoon character going, bark, 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 and then laid back down. And after about a 5 count, we heard tittering from everywhere around us. But the most fun part is about, 6 to 10 years later, I heard someone else at Penzic tell that story of that happening. And so that was really fun to realize that my friend had become part of Penzic lore.
That's always fun to hear stories from someone else that you were there for the whole thing.
Now, nothing really noteworthy happened during my woods battle, except it was the year that they said there were too many bees. So after we'd been in the woods for about a half hour, they called it off because there had been some potentially bad instances of bees getting in armor, inside armor, not, well, anyway. But a few years later, when I was no longer fighting, my husband was with a group of our tournament company friends, the Grand Company of the Peacock. And of course, the battle was delayed, as it always is. And so they just sat around and thought, well, what do we want to accomplish during our battle? And they said, well, we'd like to fight in a meadow. That would be pleasant, to find a meadow. And then they said, well, and it'd be nice if a hold was called so we could sit down in the shade and enjoy our meadow. And it'd be nice if there was a babbling brook near us so we could listen to the pleasant sound of the brook. And they just kept going and adding more things like, well, it'd be nice if some lovely water bearers came by and gave us water while we were in our meadow. And of course, we'd like to be beset by a stronger force and win. Because if they're not stronger than you, a win doesn't count. And lo and behold, if every one of those criteria wasn't met during their woods battle. And I think that's just a fabulous story.
That is awesome. They should ask more things.
Yeah, exactly.
So you've been to Penzic. Have you been to any of the other wars? I think you've been.
I've been to golf wars. I started going to, as queen was my first golf wars. And I've gone to as many as I could manage since then. Because there's horses.
Yes, there are horses at golf courses.
And shopping. Oh my goodness. I have not made it to any other wars. I have gone out to Quest for Camelot on the far west of Northshield.
Mm-hmm.
So Penzic's the furthest east, Gulf War is the furthest south, Quest for Camelot was the furthest west. And I've been to Winnipeg. So that was the furthest north. Oh, maybe west also, I'm not sure.
No, Quest is a little further west.
I think so, yeah.
Did you go to Gimli, or did you go to
No.
12th Night
12th Night.
in Castle Rouge? Or it was just some random
It
event?
must have been a 12th night. It was when there was going to be a baronial changeover.
Mhm.
And Siegfried and I wanted to at least get to as many areas, if not every group, as we could. And that was
Right.
the most accessible Northwestern event we could make it. So we drove 13 hours, we stayed 24, and we drove back.
Yeah, I've been to those events where you.
I imagine you have.
Yeah. When Jeanette's coronation, I think that was the last time I've done one of those. Yeah. Spent a lot of time in our cars.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you want to talk about your reign? What kind of inspired you to want to be Queen of Northshield?
Siegfried was so earnest. He wanted to be king, I think, and he convinced me that I would be a great queen and that together we could shape the kingdom in a way that we both thought was beneficial and wholesome and healthy and not backstabby or mean-spirited and at first it was just like, okay, fine, let's go for it. Now it was exactly 2 weeks out, I knew he was going to win.
Yeah.
I knew, and it's like, okay, it's now or never if I really don't want to do this. But we went through with it, and it was amazing. It was just amazing. I have nothing else to compare it to. It was so much more work than I'm told other reigns are because of the writing of laws and the creating of the oaths. And we really, really wanted to try and find a different model for awards other than the AOA, GOA peerage. We had to have those, but we thought maybe we could work something else in there or, combine things and have, well, we couldn't. We could not come up with another model. But we did try just because we thought they're all the same. Why? Well, now we know. Let's see. It was one of the best pieces of advice I got, probably the best piece of advice I got, was the people want to love you. So be worthy of that. Don't disappoint them. And that was a great motto to have because it allowed me, I'm kind of outgoing and Siegfried is too, and it allowed me to let people do things for me, which I would normally not do. I'm pretty Midwestern. I'm self-sufficient, doggone it. So it allowed me to let people do things for me, for us, for the kingdom. Encouraged me to encourage other heads of departments at events and whatnot. It's like, accept help. Mm-hmm. People want to do this for you, for the group, for the kingdom. And I wanted to make sure things stayed fun. The potential is always there when you have people who, you don't know what it is they want from or what they expect royalty to be. And I just wanted to at least set an example of keeping it fun, keeping it friendly, Um, you try to keep everyone happy. It doesn't always work, but it can still be done in a friendly manner, even if you have to disappoint someone.
Right.
It's not about squashing someone that doesn't agree with you. It's about compromise if you can, and just making a decision if you can't. So that's kind of where we were coming from.
Mm-hmm.
Did that even come close to answering the question?
Yeah, I think it did. Yeah. And so you were pretty certain that he was going to win.
Yep.
And so how was it on the day of the crown tourney? How did that go for you?
It was still nerve-wracking. For one thing, Siegfried scared the pants off me because he was so focused. As he said, he'd been training really hard, and he got in the zone, and he would pace the sidelines just in his own head, and it was he was just he had his fierce face on, of course, until the incident of putting the helmet on backwards, which was fabulous. It probably is what made him relax and enjoy the fight. But it was tense. It was very tense.
Mm-hmm.
There were a lot of people in that room that really wanted it. And there were a lot of people in that room that would have been good, different, but good in that role. So yeah, it was tense. And of course, every win was a sigh of relief. And the losses were, don't let this freak you out, Zig. Just stay yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So, and sitting with Fina and the other Roses and Persephones around us was just an amazing support.
Mm-hmm.
And you know that.
Yeah, I do.
At that point in time, everybody's just wanting it to be over. So whoever wins, it's going to be good. And I respected the other ladies that were in contention, as it was just an amazing experience of coming together and supporting the incipient kingdom
Mm-hmm.
versus contention, other than the physical prowess combat.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird moment. Crown tournament is just, I find my head goes to a different space when somebody fights for you in Crown.
It's kind of transcendent, which is a word that probably means something different to each person that hears it, but it is kind of on another level of awareness of everyone in the room, and also just kind of focusing on what's happening on the floor in front of you.
Yeah, I guess it is kind of one of those you have to experience to know what that feels like, but it's not like any normal tournament, that's for sure.
No.
And I guess I have to say that both times I've been fought for in Crown, I had a pretty good inkling that they were going to win. So whether or not I was prepared for it, I guess that's another story. But
yeah, it's still a system shock.
Mm-hmm. It's like, oh, now what?
Yeah. Yep.
So what was it like for you when he did that last blow and he won and everybody's excited? And
it was one of those, it was a tunnel vision moment when suddenly it was just he and I, because we were going to be the royal couple, and we were not a couple. I was married. I don't think he was dating anyone at the beginning, because at the beginning of the reign, at least, I know by the end of the reign he was interested in someone, but we've been friends for a long time, and we've been, of course, working together to get ready for this event, and so I think he was on his knees, whether it was because he was had a leg struck, or because he just kind of collapsed on his knees when he realized it was over. And Feeney and I hugged each other, I believe. And then he was coming towards me and he kind of slid on his knees up, and I hugged that sweaty head and told him to breathe. And then thankfully people kind of took us by the hand and said, let's get out of here.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go talk. Let's go figure out what our next move is. And we were both, we had garb to change into when they so we were able to be cleaned up a little bit when they declared that. I think just he had to change. I had my houppelande on already, and we were both shaking for probably the next hour.
Mm-hmm.
And if we hadn't had first the ladies of the Rose and then each other to hold us up, I don't know if I would have stayed upright.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So what was your airship like before you became queen?
Well, I know Zig described it well. He did a lot of training, and we did meet at least once a week, sometimes more often. We had Robert McCormick, who he and his lady wife, Savnia, kind of were jointly our chamberlain, I believe. But he was a herald, so he did a lot of, he pulled up a lot of the information on what the protocols were, what kind of things it is we need to come up with. As Siegfried had said in his interview with Kieran, that we asked people who are already Principality officers, give us your recommendations on, the Knights Marshal Handbook, the Arts and Sciences Handbook, etc., all the different job descriptions that needed to be defined. And mostly we went with SCA minimum. We didn't do a whole lot of adding to that because we figured, we don't know what we're going to be. We don't know what we're doing. We don't have an agenda per se, other than to keep things fun and friendly. So, we did try to come up with the names of awards once we decided on our award schedule, or that we were going to fit with what everyone else used. We did have the decision of whether to join the White Scarf Treaty to make a specific grant of arms fencing award, if that was the terminal award in your kingdom, and fencers couldn't go any higher. And I kind of thought we probably would, but we went and we did a lot of research. We talked to fencers, both pro and con, both in the mid-realm, in Northshield, and we talked to some of the fencers from kingdoms that did sign on to the White Scarf Treaty with the other kingdoms. And then we, of course, had to very carefully choose the principles of all our different awards. And I know when it came to the fencing, we specifically wanted some principles that would display, that would sort of embody prowess, that would embody a love of learning and teaching, and that would sort of embody the joie de vivre and the let's look good out on the field type of attitude. And so that's why we chose Mateo, Toshikagi, and Rodrigo as our principals. But we kept that a secret, and apparently we did a good job, because the fencers were just biting their nails, wondering what we were going to do. And then we signed it during court. So
that's cool.
Yeah, that was a really nifty moment, because people literally, no one knew what we were going to do.
Yeah.
And of course, several of the signatory kingdoms were represented there. So that was neat to have that royalty who had also signed the White Scarf Treaty in attendance there.
Yeah. I'm sure there were other moments that day with your coronation were special. Do you want to talk about those?
Oh my goodness. One thing I regret is that I did not get to see the final Principality court because I was in the back trying to keep Siegfried from chewing through the walls. And going over lines, going over how things are going to go, realizing, of course, that no plan survives contact with the enemy. So we're going to have to punt. So I didn't get to see that. And I was told someone was taping it, but apparently no tape has ever shown up of that final court. But, and Zig was pleased that his parents were there. My parents were also there. I knew they were going to be there though, because I made the arrangements. But that was enormously special. Wow. Coming out, walking from the back of the room to the front was, I think, the longest walk I've ever taken. And we were hanging on to each other. And then we were pretty adamant that we each crown ourselves. None of this, he won, so I'm an afterthought business. I mean, corpora makes it clear that the crown is one, and that means we're equal. So we had the crowns, I believe, on the BDR, the Big Damn Rock. And after, the heralds read out that we were no longer part of the mid-realm and we were going to be our own kingdom, we had memorized our oath and we said it, and we each picked up the crown and put it on our own heads. And then we proceeded to have the various peerage orders and landed barons and baronesses come up to receive their regalia back and do their oath. Now, Siegfried made an allusion in his interview with Kieran that there was a little bit of tension over what the oaths would be for the chivalry, and that they did not want to get away from the mid-realm Tolkien oath that they had sworn to the middle. Because of it just said that they owed allegiance to their liege lord, I did request that they say liege lord and lady, or just the crown. And that was another bone of contention that stayed the way it was officially. But when we administered the oath to the knights, a couple of voices, of which the only one I recognized was Terek's, loudly and pointedly added, "and lady," after saying that they owed they're pledged to their liege lord. And that just caused more tears. Those two words made me feel like a queen. And then when some of the knights just took their chains back, and we said, take your chain, and some took it back and put them on, and some of them came around and asked me to put them on. And that was also extraordinary. That was just so touching that would be important in this time of so much going on, that they would take that moment to make me part of that. So then, in each of all the peerages, there was something special that, there were the ones who would ask us to put their medallions back on, or the barons and baronesses to put their coronets on. And the populace oath of fealty was indeed as amazing as Siegfried described. We got down off the stage and went out into kind of the center of the room, and people surrounded us on all sides, wanting to be part of this ceremony, acknowledging that we together, all of us, we were now a kingdom. We were now a family in this kingdom of Northshield. Mm-hmm. And I think Siegfried said he almost, we bawled. So that was absolutely extraordinary.
Yeah. That was a great day.
It was a great day. And the members of the kingdom had also already been extraordinarily generous with giving us largesse, things that we could give out with awards, which I think we pretty much only did the principals that day. But we had gifts for the other royalty that were pure Northshield, from artisans, and we had songs and pieces of music that were composed for this event. And it was just the whole kingdom giving to each other all day.
Awesome. So coronation, and then you had your reign. What were some of the highlights from your reign?
Well, we decided, and it was all right, Siegfried started it, but we decided we wanted to have many of our key presentations of awards to people be gotchas. I know Shava talked about in her interview, talked about the gotcha between her and Fisk for her being made, I believe, the first pelican. Mm-hmm. And we kind of continued that, where we would set people up to think something else was happening, or we would call them up for something innocuous. I remember one event we were making a court baroness, and I feel very badly I didn't get a chance to look her name up because names have been escaping me of late. But Siegfried kept talking about trying to give her a gift because she was moving away. And she was someone dear to very many people. And so I had a box, and it had a coronet in it, but no one knew that. And I would be pulling out things from the box, slips of paper from the box that were supposedly a quiz for her. And then we finally said, well, there are no more questions. We'll just have to give you this. And that was one of the best gotchas we ever had. And of course, I held it up behind the top of the box so the populace could see it before she did. Mm-hmm. And that was a very sweet gotcha. But we really tried to do that at almost every event we both went to. Mm-hmm. So that, and picking on Leaf was kind of our thing.
So you picked on Leaf as well?
Oh, Siegfried and Leaf have been pranking each other their whole SCA life. Locking each other in restroom, porta potties, messing with each other's armor, just not giving them each other the kind of booze they expect. So of course it's a surprise. So yeah, we picked on Leaf an awful lot and made him do little jigs, and we made him run errands for us, and he took it in very good humor.
Yeah, that sounds like Leaf.
I'm just glad he didn't get a chance to get back at us.
Never know.
That's true. That's true.
So when you were done, you were real glad to be done reigning. Have you ever thought about reigning again?
I have. It would be, I think, a lot of fun to try it when I wasn't blazing a new trail with everything I did or said. My husband keeps saying it won't be the work you had last time. You won't have to write laws, edit laws. You won't have to come up with oaths. You won't have to do. And I did a lot of research on those oaths. I actually was able to find a 13th century fealty contract. And so some of the more obscure language from our oaths, I was able to lift from that. And let's see if I can remember. At the end of what the king and queen say, it says that we will behave towards you respectively in all things. And I know it was a lot of people's inclination to say respectfully, but no, it was respectively. So if you give us loyalty, we'll give you loyalty. If you give us deceit, we'll give you deceit. That kind of thing. So what you give us, we will give back, is what the respectively meant. And I was tickled to death to be able to come up with the language of an actual period contract to use in our oaths.
Nice.
So anyway, I had to get that dear question in there. Let's see, where were we? What was the question?
I think I asked you if you would want to reign again.
Oh, yes. So yeah, it wouldn't be as much work. We wouldn't have all that research and
Right.
and everything being something new that we had to get right. The first time before we set things in stone. One thing that stops me though is that anyone who knows me would never be able to call me Your Grace with a straight face.
Oh, why is that?
I'm clumsy, so it would be a stretch.
This takes getting used to.
Yeah, just the expectations don't go there. But yeah, it would be fun. I mean, of course, the limelight is always seductive, but it is the best place from which to get to know the people of the kingdom and to know who's doing what, and people show you the most amazing things that they have created. There was I don't remember if it was called a rose tournament or a flower tournament, where I gave flowers to the winners of bouts, and then they were to go out and give it to someone who inspired them. But during one of the intermissions between rounds, this mother was poking her son to come up and talk to me on the throne. And he was like, Mom. But he had embroidered a compass star. Just a simple compass star on a piece of black fabric and put in an embroidery hoop. But he was 8 years old, and he had done that so he could give it to me.
Oh, that's really sweet.
And it still hangs on my wall in my bedroom. And it was just that kind of thing. People wanted to show us how much our having a king and queen meant to them. And that kind of give and take is really fun, is probably the best part of the job of being a king and queen.
Yeah, making special moments for people.
Yes, and accepting the special moments they want to make for you.
Yeah, because they do. Do you have, like, besides those, do you have a particular moment that was really special to you when you were queen?
I think I told you both of them that came to mind. The knights adding hand lady unscripted, and little William giving me this embroidery that he was just so shy, that he had obviously done and made with the intention of giving it to me, but he was still too shy to do it.
Nice. So you've lived in Northshield your whole career. So what is your favorite Northshield quirk?
Wow. I think it's kind of the fact that while we are reverent and circumspect, like in courts and when we need to be, we can also be irreverent otherwise. I mean, we give things that happen in court the respect, and things that happen in court, awards, people's accomplishments, the respect they deserve. But we will never let Hroder live down the fact that he got dumped by a horse named Tinkerbell.
Sure.
We're like siblings. We celebrate each other's honors. We squabble and we pick on each other. And maybe other places have that too, and I'm just not part of it, so I don't see it. Mm-hmm. But I never felt that as a widespread attitude in the mid-realm. It might be true of households or, different associations of people, but not the kingdom as a whole. And that's the only other kingdom I've really experienced.
Right.
So just sort of the familial respect and mocking that one has.
Yeah, definitely. Let's see. Trying to find some questions I haven't asked you. So for a new person starting out, what advice would you give to them?
Try everything. Even if you've never wanted to cook before, give it a shot, because it's very different when you're both, learning things, you're learning about new dishes and the different spice and taste combinations, and you're working with a team of other people. Try calligraphy. You're going to want to know how to write your name sooner or later, and you might like it. It's an art that has, it's easier to get into because there's specific rules to follow until you know what you're doing and feel like you can punt. Try blacksmithing, because it's something you've never, it is an entirely different kind of thing than anyone does in the real world. I just try everything. I mean, it took me way too long to learn that, and I probably missed many opportunities.
Right.
So
what things would you like to do in the future on your wish list?
On my wish list, I actually would like to do more period cooking, and period, like open campfire cooking. Granted, at events, I'm usually so busy doing everything else that I grab something to stuff in my face, and I don't want to take the time. But one of my very best friends does a lot of it, and it just sounds so fun and just kind of zen. That's what you're doing, is you're creating nummy food for people. Let's see. I would like to try weaving. I've never done that. I would like to get back to calligraphy and illumination if my crooked fingers would let me do it. Because I did enjoy that. It was very centering to have this piece of art to focus on that you are making for someone. I can't go back to heavy fighting. I've had too many injuries. I don't know if I could do fencing either because of my hands. But I can swing a sword from horseback, so doing more of that would be great. I'd like to go back to dancing.
Yeah.
I used to dance a lot. I'm in the sort of brawl category of dancing. The whole intricate figures of English country dance are terrifying.
Yes, they are.
but I love me a good brawl.
Anything else?
Oh, I'd love to become a master herbalist, but who knows if that'll ever happen.
Never know.
You don't ever know. So.
Let's see. Have we talked about everything you?
I was just going over the list, so I think. Let's see. Gotcha. I think we hit most of them.
Okay. So I'll hit you up with my last question.
Uh-oh.
What is the best thing about Northshield?
That whatever you want to do, you can find someone to teach you. I think even whether people are laurels in something or whether they are one step ahead of you in learning, I think the Northshield culture is such that people are more than happy to show you what they're doing, maybe research with you, learn with you if that's what ends up happening. But I love the fact that just about anybody is willing to teach anybody. So.
Yeah, that is a great thing about Northshield. You can usually, if you want to know something, you can throw a rock and somebody will say yes.
And laurels will admit they don't know everything and they will ask other people if it's something other people know about. So just, I like it. I'm a fan.
Awesome. Well, I think that's it. I want to thank you for joining us today. It's been awesome.
Well, thank you, Your Majesty, for this opportunity and for having this as a way to experience the SCA even when we can't be in the same room together.
Yeah, well, Kieran and I both thought it was a good time to kind of capture the stories of everyone while we're just kind of, while we're at home and share and get to know each other a little better over online. I
agree. Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you very much, and we'll see you next time on Griffin Tales.
Until fate brings us shoulder to shoulder to stand as brothers again.